Is that future, overhyped, or disruptive in the best way?
If I have to choose one of those three, I know that it's being done out of necessity. The reason that I hesitated and what why I said that is because it increases the cost for someone to actually get in to see us, right? Because more of the burden goes on to the patient as far as out of pocket expense.
This episode is brought to you by Pintcast. That's us. If you've ever thought about launching your own podcast for your brand, your clinic, your business, or just because talking to people is fun, we can help launch your show. You record, we edit, and do all the other stuff. Email me at jimmy@ptpintcast.com. Our guest today is a 25-year physical therapy vet who saw a broken system and built something that would revolutionize how providers run their practices. From chasing down documentation at home to fighting the burnout beast, she's on a mission to help therapists not just survive, but thrive. With a passion for advocacy, innovation, and a whole lot of data, she's here to share what the future of rehab therapy really looks like and what you can do about it. She's the brains and heart behind WebPT and one of the most influential voices in therapy today. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Heidi Jannenga.
After you're gone, this way you don't have to sit there uncomfortably while I'm reading an intro about you. And we know what we've talked about. So how can I tee people up? I was trying to think, is this the third time we've done an episode about this report? Third or fourth, maybe? How many reports have you had?
This is our 10th report. So
maybe
I'm sure that but I mean, we didn't really start really pushing it hard more publicly until the last 5 years or so. So probably 3 or 4.
Because Heidi, this podcast is 9.5 years old. I was talking with Ben Fung, Ben Fung, a bunch of people who just said yes. 10 years ago, you had to explain to people what a podcast was. Then they had to, and then people were not in, I'm a guest on all these thing mode, right? So you had to explain it. And then,
early adopter of the podcast.
And then you said yes. Like, why would you have said yeah? That was a risk. You were like, you're like, okay, I'll talk to this. I was a student. Maybe that was it. I played the student card.
Yes, you were a student, but you also are just very, vibrant in what you're trying to talk about, and your passion for the industry and all of that is super intriguing. And, we're also entrepreneurs and early adopters, Ben Fung for sure is all over this media stuff. He was a social influencer before that became a thing. So
yeah. Well, let's start with this. Since this is a decade of you doing this, you now look at these things and you've got something that scientists and data people love is you can compare it to other things that you've done exactly the same way. So when you take a look at this, the newest report that's out now, what surprised you the most? What made you happy? Let's talk about all the emotions. Happy, sad, surprised, confused. What jumps out at you from this report?
Yeah. Well, we don't ask the same exact questions every year. We do have a set of questions that we do ask that are consistent, a lot about demographics, understanding sort of, what is going on in the industry. We also then, ask some more pointed questions on areas that we have interest in. And so highlights, I always like to start with positive. We saw some nice things on salaries, increases in salaries. We also saw and heard that student debt numbers were slightly down compared to what people were reporting in the past.
Good.
The adoption of technology, obviously for us is a good thing. People are very interested, of course, just like every other industry, in AI. And I think also this year, it's been ramping up over the years, but just the sort of our theme this year was really about what does the practice of the future look like? And this year, more than any year, we heard about the interconnectivity, not only just within our own industry and, with billing and other things, but definitely connecting with other providers as well. So, the more holistic sort of view of, getting physician referrals to potentially even us being that primary care provider as well to help get the patient the services and, other provider options that they need, was definitely a theme throughout, what people think about as far as, practice of the future.
Well, you stole my second question. That was my setup question, which was, hey,
Oh.
this year, that's all right, though. It was a good radio segue. I love watching videos from like the 40s, 50s, and 60s when they're like, this is what 1990 will look like. And then we're in 1990 and we're like, we don't have jetpacks. I was so disappointed. People, and then of course in the 90s, we're saying this is what 2025 is going to look like. And we get here and we're like, we're still using fax machines. Cars pretty much still get the same miles per gallon, maybe a little bit more. But what do you...
Still haven't caught up with the Jetsons. Come on. Do we even know what the Jetsons are?
Teleportation, Rosie, George and Judy. Of course I know the Jetsons. Which if you think about that time period, like the two most popular cartoons were the past and the future. And we're always talking about that. It was the Flintstones and the Jetsons. Where have we been and where are we going? So let's throw out bold ideas and be wrong. I'd rather throw out bold idea and be wrong. But what is a practice of the future look like? Or what do you hope is just something that's commonplace 10 years from now that maybe isn't anywhere yet?
Well, I know you're editing this, but we didn't talk about the challenges. So we only talked about the positives.
Okay. Go to the challenges.
So if we look at the challenges side, we still have burnout as an issue. There were significant resignations. So job hopping is happening.
A lot.
And also, unfortunately, therapists moving away from clinical care into non-clinical opportunities. And that's obviously been pointed at burnout. So that's one low light. I think the other sort of obvious low light that we've continued to have as an issue is our advocacy in terms of payment. So whether or not it's, insurance payment, we have, clinics that are still trying to move to cash-based services. But, as we think about just the volatility of the economy in general, right? So that's a little bit difficult to think about. Like if people are really going to want to put their dollars towards PT services. And then, you could, depending on who is saying that salaries are going up, that's also a challenge for clinic owners and directors, in that it's pinching the profit margins of practices in general, which have been slowly declining over the years anyway. So,
some people will do, and they'll share. You can share anything on LinkedIn. You just push publish and it gets shared. So it might not be right. But some people are saying if you adjust for inflation, you're actually making less money than we did 20, 30 years ago. And it just drops your stomach, right? It's one of those just plain wrong things. So that's all right. So we've done highs and lows, and now you collect data to understand a little bit of now, but of course to look in the future. So I'll ask that question. What is the practice of the future? Be bold. I would love to look back on this when we do this next year, and maybe I'll get the editor to pull all the clips. Heidi's predictions, Heidi's glass ball, her prediction ball. What do you hope is commonplace either a year? A year is kind of close, 5 or 10 years from now. What do you hope is table stakes that isn't somewhere now?
Well, I think we're moving in the direction of this, but I think we've yet to embrace the hybrid model in terms of having patients come into the practice for visits, but then also doing follow-ups in other connectivity areas, whether it's home exercise program or, a home sort of assessment that's via a virtual visit.
Right.
I do think that is the wave of the future. It's not all in person. I know that's still our secret sauce, so we're never going to lose that. Our hands-on care, putting hands on folks is still unique and a differentiator for us, which I don't ever want to lose. But you can't deny, just in terms of convenience for the patient, but B, research that's coming out that says the hybrid model with some virtual and some my cat's here. Also some, in-person visits allows you to get the same outcomes in perhaps a more cost-effective manner for the patient.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I think for sure that we need to embrace and are for sure moving to.
Are you still staying late just to finish your notes? Athelis Scribe uses ambient AI to auto-generate documentation, so your notes are done before you leave the room. You want to see how it works? Email me now at jimmy@ptpintcast.com. I'll give you a quick demo.
Heidi, like 5 years ago, telehealth was a thing. I remember sitting at CSM in Denver before the world sort of hit the brakes. Oh, it's cute. It's 10 years away. Won't be able to do it. And fate was laughing at us saying 10 minutes away. It's more like 10 minutes away. But things, technology, culture, society moves at the speed of necessity. And when when you open that box, I feel like you don't get to close it back up and say, well, I know you liked it, but now we're not going to do it. We're seeing it with remote work, not just telehealth, but remote work, and people saying, I loved it, or it was good. And the answer in PT school or college, whenever it's never or always, stay away from that answer, right? So is telehealth everything? I don't think so. Is it never? I also don't think so. So yeah, I think.
No, but it increases the access to care. We've seen that, right? And which is really important. And so today we're also in this interesting time period in which we have had some exodus of a large percentage of our therapists away from clinical care. So the adjustment that has to be made in our profession, because we just can't graduate enough students, we've done such a good job of getting more people to understand the value of PT, increase, that the 90% problem that we've been talking about for years, right? And that 90% of people don't know what PT is, and they don't know the value that we provide. Well, I think we've moved that probably a couple of percentage points, but at that point, that means millions of referrals are now coming into PT. And so, but now we have the shortage, right? So we don't have the providers to keep up with the volume. And so that pressure on the industry is going to cause us to be able to need to increase our access to care, which, is telehealth can be that way to have more opportunity for therapists to see more patients, increase the volume. But that's also something that I think in the future, the efficiency of our care model has to change. And so how AI comes into play in the future, I think, will be through obviously a technology provider. I think that, the clinical reasoning part of our brains has to continue to be, again, our sort of secret sauce. But serving up the options to choose from, I think it's going to be much easier for us to make these decisions quicker, have the past medical history and all the things, the red flags be assessed via AI. And then us be able to filter through those things much quicker at our fingertips to make these critical decisions, and clinical pathways be very obvious, and clinical evidence-based practice will actually be a bit more forced upon us.
I mean, if people are listening to the podcast, I do want you to go to YouTube, because I want you to see what Heidi is wearing on her face. Because when you jumped on the screen, I half expected Heidi to say, because the vibe I'm getting from your glasses is very Tony Stark. It's very Iron Man. So I kind of half expected you to be like, this is a heads up display and it looks like glasses, but I'm actually seeing patient history or biometric data. And that's an insane thing to say, except in a year or two, it might not be. You know what I mean? Like, you might be able to analyze gait with glasses that you're just standing there that look like just regular readers. And that's bananas 10 years ago, and it's not that bananas now.
Well, I have to give a shout out to my friend Annette Zinke, who is the COO at Theraspecs. You might have seen them. They've had a booth at CSM, but they are an amazing glasses company. They, I'm not an influencer or any of those things. Like, I'm just a consumer of their amazing product. We were talking about this prior, but with being on computers so much and going into, offices that still unfortunately have fluorescent lights and things, I would just get really eye fatigued, and even to the point of headaches. And although it took me a while I do also think they're a little crazy on the color, but I have to get used to it because I get a lot of attention and people ask all the time, "Oh my God, where those glasses are cool."
Right.
But they're really therapeutic, actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they serve a purpose. But anyway.
So you talk about a shortage in the profession.
Yes.
Heidi's talking
Yes.
about that. Heidi also is doing and has been doing something about getting the future of PT and leaders connected. You help run the Rising Tide Foundation. I wasn't going to let you go unless you talked about that. I don't think you can remind people what that is enough. And then what is it? And then where is it now? What have you been able to do? And what's the vision?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, we are trying to get more students to into the pipeline. Rising Tide is a nonprofit organization that provides scholarships and educational enrichment for first and second year PT students from underrepresented backgrounds. And so we provide scholarships that add up to close to $50,000 for 2 to 3 years over their time that they're in PT school. We offer 20 scholarships per year for DPT students. We also have a surge track, which is for residency students, which is up to $10,000 for a year of your residency program. But more than just check writers, we also offer educational enrichment. So we have quarterly meetups with our scholars. We also have started a big community education piece. So anybody who's ever applied or has been a part of our community at some point in time can be part of what we call our PT pod. We have a whole Slack channel, interconnectivity, networking. We offer monthly webinars for them. We also have started an Employer Connect program in which we've had amazing sponsors through our Employer Connect program that want to connect with these students and eventually, hopefully, be their first employer out of school. We've deployed $1.1 million in scholarship funds over the last 5. We're in our 5th cohort now. It's absolutely been the most rewarding thing that I've done in my career.
If someone wants to,
without WebPT, but
if someone wanted to support or someone wanted to apply, where would you send them?
Yeah, we're in our application cycle for our DPT scholarships is open right now. It started April 1st. It will end May 30th at midnight. So get your applications in. And they can go to www.rising-tide.com, hit applications if you want to apply, and hit donations or sponsorships if you'd love to be a sponsor. We actually bring all of our scholars to Phoenix, which is where I live, once a year to all get together in person. It's absolutely amazing. We bring a whole day of speakers in. Hopefully someday you might be able to come and be a speaker. It's an amazing event that we do, and everybody comes away feeling very connected, very knowledgeable, and fully engaged with what we're doing at Rising Tide.
That's great.
Are you still stuck spending hours on administrative tasks? Empower EMR automates scheduling, billing, and documentation so you can actually focus on your patients, not your paperwork. Book a free demo now at empoweremr.com.
Heidi, you ready to play a quick game?
Sure.
We're going to play a quick game. Here we go. All right, Heidi, the game is called Future Forecast Physical Therapy Edition. All right. I'm going to give you some rapid fire trends and ideas, and then you either tell us whether it's the future, overhyped, or disruptive in the best way. So, and then you can give us like a sentence or two of why you think it is. All right. And you already I had these prepared before we talked. So some of these are going to sound like I'm teeing Heidi up with things she already said, but it's because you were thinking of the future. All right. So number one, in Future Forecast PT, AI in clinical decision making. Is that future, overhyped, or disruptive?
Future.
Yeah.
I don't think it's disruptive. I think we're already implementing it at WebPT. And I know that there's other organizations. We partnered with Prediction Health and others that are starting to help with this. The volume of data that we have lends itself to being able to do this also with the sort of workflows and evidence-based practice ways of doing things, protocols, if you will, allow us to really have an opportunity to do that.
All right. Next, future, overhyped, or disruptive? More physical therapists going out of network. Is that future, overhyped, or disruptive in the best way?
I think it's disruptive in the best way. If I have to choose one of those three, I know that it's being done out of necessity. The reason that I hesitated and what why I said that is because it increases the cost for someone to actually get in to see us, right? Because more of the burden goes on to the patient as far as out of pocket expense, and that prohibits some people from being able to come in and see us. So it's limiting the access to care, which is absolutely something I'm against. But I totally get it from a necessity of practices and where we are today in terms of the costs, which we talked about, salaries going up, inflation in general, causing us to shrink our margins. And so, I think it's a disruptive way of, out of necessity, that we've had to do in private practice.
All right, two more. A 4-day work week for rehab providers. Is that future, overhyped, or disruptive in the best way?
Again, I'm not sure about these choices. I think it's disruptive in that, I don't even know if I'd call it disruptive. I think that it is something that's actually already going on. And it is, again, out of necessity. It's a transformation of how we think about work. And I don't even think I think it's something that's been done that's being resurrected.
Yeah.
I know when I was a clinic director, we changed up our schedules because we had a clinic that was so busy and we had many therapists that we just couldn't have everybody working at the same time. And so we had, we did 4 or 3 10s and 2 5s. Right. So we did 2 half days. And so, but some people did 4 10s, right? And so I don't know. I don't think it's any of the above. I think that it is something that's been done that might just be innovative way to accommodate the work-life balance.
Remote only therapy jobs. People have these things. Is this future, overhyped, or disruptive in a good way? I
think it's overhyped. I think that if we go full virtual, we're missing our differentiator as a provider, of one of the only providers that still spends time to put our therapeutic hands and also our techniques that are, essential to the outcome of a patient. We're missing out on that, and patients are missing out on that.
Last thing we do on the show, we call it the parting shot. All right, parting shot, your last chance for a mic drop moment, a soapbox statement. How would you sum up?
Well, first of all, I'm super proud that we started it. It started as a disruptive thing when we couldn't find the data that we wanted to be able to make the decisions within our own organization that we needed and wanted to have. And so that's where it started. Now, 10 years later, we're helping other people, provide them with the data that they might need to make decisions in their business. And so I would just say, as the parting shot, data is incredibly important. It is accessible now more than ever. And so I hope that everyone will utilize this report in the best ways to find out and use data to make true decision-making, or use data in your practice to make great decisions for the business, not only today, but for the future.
Just like they said back in the 90s, the more you know. Remember those little commercials that they used to do on NBC? The more you know. Heidi Jannenga, appreciate the time. Thanks for doing this and sharing it, just giving that information away and doing all.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Like what you heard? Great. Subscribe to the show on Apple or Spotify. You can watch the episodes on YouTube. Or don't. I'm not your boss. You want to specialize in ortho, neuro, or sports physical therapy and actually get paid while doing it? Brooks IHL offers accredited residencies and fellowships with full salary, full benefits, and real mentorship from clinical experts. Learn more and apply at brooksihl.org. There aren't nearly enough podcasts in this world. Said no one. Why not launch one more? If you thought about launching a show but don't quite know how, we can help you do all that back-end stuff. Email me at jimmy@ptpintcast.com, and we can add one more podcast no one else will listen to the pile.